Hello, race fans. Peter Mackay here, welcoming you to the New York Thunder eSeries, live here on the Apex Racing TV channel. Tonight, we are going to see some fantastic action with wheel-in modified cars around the twists of the Phoenix Raceway, the ISM Raceway. Joining me in the booth tonight is Brian Delp. Brian, are you looking forward to this evening's action?
I am very much looking forward to this evening's actions. I love these modified cars, maybe a little bit more than the super late models. These cars are not run as often, and when you put these things on track and you get the right guys, these things can put on an incredible show. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see this race tonight.
And of course, these modified machines, they are seriously quick machines, and round this Phoenix Raceway, they'll be able to stretch to their full capability. What challenges are our drivers going to face tonight in this car on this track?
So one of the main things that you'll be able to see as a viewer is that motor. That motor sits right in front of you, so it does obstruct a little bit of your vision, and that can be an issue for some of these drivers who aren't used to that, because it does stick up in front of your way. It can cause you to run into the back of someone possibly, so you do have to be careful and recognize that. Another issue you have is at Phoenix. Phoenix is a very slick track sometimes when getting back on the throttle. These cars are they have a lot of traction. They aren't as slick, especially if you're on these fixed setups. They aren't as slippery there. The back end doesn't like to come out. So here though at Phoenix, when running some test laps, these back ends like to come around when you get onto the throttle, especially in 1 and 2. If you get on the throttle too hard too quickly, the back end will try to come out on you. And if you touch that apron at all in turn 1, you will have that back end coming around on you.
Well, we talked about that last night racing in the super late model series. So if you're new to us here in the New York Thunder E-Series, first of all, welcome and thank you for your company. This is the fourth and final round of this series that's been running over the last couple of nights here on the Apex Racing TV channel. And our drivers have actually used a different car each night. Would you believe it? Starting off with a Volkswagen Jetta diesel, then moving up to a small Legends car, and then last night in the super late models. And we talked a lot about the kind of unique apron and dogleg that we have here at Phoenix, which our guys were able to use in the super late models last night. So do you think then, Brian, that our drivers are going to it's going to be harder to pass tonight, or harder to make a pass stick, and perhaps not as able to dive in so deep?
I think the biggest thing here, if you're going to see a pass made, is it's going to be off of an exit. You're not really going to see it as much going into a corner, because these things you have to carry as much momentum as possible. If you try to dive it in there and you do not make it stick, and the person outside of you is able to get back on the gas before you, they're going to have more momentum and be able to pull away. These things, especially at Phoenix here, where you're off the throttle so little, you're maybe off for a whole lap for maybe 2 to 4 seconds off the throttle. It is very quick. You do not want to miss that throttle time, because like I said, if you do, the other driver is just going to pull away. So you need to be able to just stick it right up behind someone going into a corner and get on the throttle before them and pull right to their inside on exit.
And of course, these cars, as you can see on screen, are getting a pretty vivid demonstration of how much corner speed these cars can carry, and they've got incredibly wide, chunky tyres as well. So I guess this is going to be a demonstration tonight of who's really got the bravery and who can who can really put it on the ragged edge. I think we're going to see some real action tonight. Looking at the car, the number 631 of Max Steck on screen, in the Jack Daniels car, he looks like he's got his two dogs on the back bonnet there of his late model. Probably certainly the most colourful car on track right now.
Yeah, these cars are always a lot of fun because, like I said, they aren't driven as much because they are one of the smaller series on the oval side, which means they also don't get as much time to be painted. So to see all these different schemes out here is a lot of fun because it shows the creativity of these guys to be able to come up with their own paints.
So last night we saw kind of a family affair triumphing. We had the number 64 of Trevor Catalano who put the car on pole and quite clearly had the ultimate one-lap pace, but he was ousted by the father and son team of Kenny and Ken Zeems, not to be mixed up with one another. Now, they did an amazing job of working together to get Kenny, the number 15, on screen here to get into victory lane last night. Now, with the super late model, they executed that beautifully. Do you think they'll be able to use that same strategy with these modified cars?
I very much think so. Depending on how this race goes and the cautions that happen, if we get a long green flag run, then you're definitely going to have to bring it down. I don't feel like you can stay out. But if we get the cautions that we did last night, I could see them using that exact same strategy today to try to put one of them in victory lane.
So, just a recap of our time so far in practice. Our drivers have got a 20-minute free practice session. So, on the top left of your screen, you'll see our timing tower, and business as usual, the number 64 of Catalano at the top, and Kenny Zeems, the number 15. He actually ran the number 5 last night, not running 15 tonight. The second quickest, and Father Ken Zeems in 6th position. So, of course, for that strategy to work, Dad's got to be up there up front as well. So, with likely to have a few cautions over the race tonight, and Catalano, he's going to have to really work hard for this to get this final victory tonight, I think.
Yeah, and the other thing though is back towards the in 5th place right now, the times in practice is Tyler Catalano. So he's picking up some time right now. So we could see the Catalanos working together over the Zeems tonight, maybe learning something from last night and putting that into effect, depending on how this race plays out also.
There's family turf wars here in the New York Thunder eSeries.
Yeah, it seems like it. A lot of these guys, of course, from New York, with this being the New York Thunder eSeries, so a lot of family affairs going on now, and I definitely think those that have the family members in the series, it's going to help them along the way, because we saw it last night what happens. If you can put one of you in that first position and the other one be third, you can time it up so that you can get that jump to be racing the second place car going into turn 1. And then a caution comes out and you're right back at it again, running that same thing over and over again. And it then typically ends up leading to a victory for at least one of you.
Well, I think it's going to be a fascinating contest tonight. I mean, we talked about it a little bit off air. These have got to be one of the most dramatic looking race cars anywhere in the world. So we're riding on board with Trevor Catalano. There you are, Penny and Copper, running on the back of the number 631 car. And really, I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I couldn't run into the back of a car with two cute dogs on the back of it. I just couldn't do it. But just a great onboard shots here. We're on board with the 12 of William Kruska, and gives quite a vivid demonstration of how you really are on the limits of grip here.
Yeah, as you saw there with Trevor Catalano, he did push up a little bit, and these big tires that you have here, if you're on that throttle too early, you're just going to push up, and it's going to end up sending you towards the wall, which ends up, if there's a person out there, you're going to get right into the back of them. These big tires lend them to just accidentally turning someone, because while these things aren't huge in terms of weight, they are very wide, and so that's one thing you do have to think about when you're side by side with someone.
Earlier today, Brian, I was watching some of the Whelen Tour action from Bristol with these cars that run in the real world in a NASCAR officially sanctioned series, and I noticed the name Catalano on there. So, is there some sort of real world connection with the Catalanos in this type of racing in the real world?
I'm not 100% sure with that. That's something I may have to actually do some looking into. But a name that most people would associate with these cars is that of Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece, of course, the driver for JTG Daughtry, driving the 37 now. He was someone who he was running in the modified series and then was running a handful of races for Joe Gibbs Racing in the Xfinity series. He didn't go through a full Truck Series run. He didn't run through a full Xfinity series. He only ran a handful of races and ended up picking up a win. And at that point, he got on the radar of a few cup teams without even ever running a full schedule of any of the lower series other than a Whelen modified tour. So he's the biggest name to come really out of these things in recent memory. So he's the person that a lot of people just associate with these cars, and I think he's brought a lot of attention to these cars because this is a modified driver who was able to make it to the big time without really running through all these series that a lot of people have to go through.
It's a fascinating story, and that's the one thing I love about NASCAR is the variety of routes that you can take to the top, and also how dirt track racing still matters. I'm also a huge fan of motorcycle racing, and in particular MotoGP. And back in the late '80s and early '90s, it was all the American dirt trackers and the way they used to slide the bike about on the dirt really transferred well over to Grand Prix motorcycles. Sadly, we don't really see that anymore, and funnily enough, as soon as that stopped, the kind of flow of American talent in motorcycle racing stopped. But of course, it's very much still with us. We saw, well, most notably, Kyle Larson winning the Chili Bowl earlier this year and has raced at the Chili Bowl for a number of years. And how important is that, a dirt track racing background to succeeding in oval racing on the pavement?
It really just it helps with some of the tracks and a lot of the control because a lot of times with these cars you want them to be loose. Loose is fast is what you say on ovals. It gives you more control of the car. The downside of that is you got to be able to know how to control the car when that back end starts slipping around. And so some of these dirt track guys know how to do that. I look at Christopher Bell and a lot of the stuff that he does on the dirt side with racing in the Chili Bowl and some of the other big races. And you just see that he has very good car control when he wrecks. Most of the time, he ends up saving it. He's made some incredible saves recently in one of the races. He got turned around, and they're always all the commentators are always wondering how does he save that? Well, it comes from his background in dirt and knowing that how to control that car when that back end starts to come around.
And of course, we saw the one thing that just fascinates me is that Tony Stewart, a proper NASCAR Hall of Famer, one of the best ever to be seen in the NASCAR Cup Series. But Tony's obviously a very wealthy man. He's been very successful in his career. But what fascinates me is he still goes out races during the week in all kinds of things, in sprint cars and midgets, and he's a former Chili Bowl winner himself as well, isn't he?
Yeah, Tony loves the dirt track. Of course, he owns Eldora Speedway now, and puts on the great races that happen up there. He loves to give back to dirt racing because that's where his roots are. Of course, we know Tony's also done open wheel. Tony just loves racing in general, but dirt is where I believe his heart is, and so do so many others because he gives so much to it. And then he also just loves to go race. When he was during his career, he was still out racing dirt tracks. Sometimes I'd get him in trouble when he ended up with an injury that sidelined him from his Cup Series career. But that's what happens when you own a team in the Cup Series. You kind of are in control. So he was able to go and just do the things he loved, which is to race.
And that's what that is. When people, sometimes when you hear about drivers getting paid big salaries or doing really well financially out of their racing, and they say, "Oh, he's just doing it for money." I think that demonstrates all you need to know that these guys are racers first and foremost, and it's almost like most of them would tell you they would do it for free if they had to.
Yeah, I think there's a big misconception there that a lot of this is for money, but it's not. These guys love to race. They don't care about the money. The money is secondary for them. They just want to be up there competing. And of course, supporting families is a big thing, but they just love to race or they wouldn't be doing this. They would have gone to some other career. And then when you put in so much time as some of these guys do, where they're racing on weekends in a Cup Series or Xfinity Series, and then during the week you're somewhere finding some dirt track to go race on. It just shows the love that these guys have for the sport.
Oh, and a spin on screen for the number 164 of Tyler Catalano. Doing some donuts for us, giving us a good show. So thanks for that, Tyler. So we got interestingly the Catalanos in the 164 and the 64. They've got quite a distinctive livery on our paint scheme on their car. They're obviously supporters of the current standing president, so they'll be easy enough to spot on track. Now, for those who are new to us here in the New York Thunder E Series, they are using the solo qualifying format. So that basically means that each driver has the track to themselves to set their qualifying time rather than in a group. So the drivers are now completing their qualifying of 5 minutes and will be ready to go racing. Who is your favourite for this race, Brian Delp?
Well, I gotta look at Kenny Zeems and Trevor Catalano. I don't know who truly has the edge. I think maybe whichever one gets their family member to come be closest to them may give them that little bit of edge. But these two are fast, and they will be racing side by side most of the night, I feel like. So it's going to be very fun to see these two duking it out the entire time.
So our drivers now just getting a quick warm up, so they have just 3 minutes to get themselves settled in, get up to pace, and then we will be good to go. As you'll see, all our cars coming onto track now. Um, Interestingly, during qualifying, the most of the drivers able to keep it on the black top, but it's going to be really interesting watching these drivers in close combat. Last night we saw a lot of wrecks, particularly when drivers using multiple lines going through the dog leg. So hopefully a few lessons might have been learned after last night, I suppose.
Yeah, it's still going to be very hard though, especially like I said with that motor in the front of these cars because when you're going through that dogleg, you're carrying so much speed that a lot of times you're just trying to follow someone in front of you and you don't realize someone's out there because it's such a wide area and like we saw last night, that can just lead to you accidentally getting into someone or turning across someone's nose. So you do have to be very careful with going through there. And you also have to be careful when going down to that inside wall that someone doesn't tap that wall in front of you and you follow them right into it. So there's a little bit of careful both ways. You don't want to get stuck to the inside also going into three because if you do, you're not going to get a very good turn, and that apron is loose in these cars.
And also, one thing that fascinates me about this quite unique layout here at Phoenix is that coming around the final turn here, as we look on screen, you've all of a sudden you've gone from lots of room and lots of different lines into the kind of it almost bottlenecks onto the front straight, and that was where we saw the majority of our wrecks, and actually a lot of cars last night that got caught up in accidents that really weren't their fault.
Yeah, we saw last night at one point they tried to force it four wide through there, and it doesn't work. There's not enough space there that you're able to cleanly run because you have to be so close to that inside wall there. Um, it forces you to be almost door to like touching doors with someone the whole way down the straight, and it's not going to work that way. Someone's going to end up getting turned, and it's going to cause a big pile up. The other thing is then once that happens, every car behind that pileup has to just guess where that wreck is going to finish and where they're going to go because you really don't know what's going to happen. You could hit a wall and bounce off down the track or up the track depending on which wall you hit, and or you could hit it and just stop. And that's the thing that it really there's no expectation on what's going to happen. It's just a pick a side and hope that's the right one.
So, for our viewers to be aware, in iRacing, there is a handy feature called a fast repair, which is basically allows our drivers, to, no matter if they've been in a wreck or not, able to come in for a repair. But Brian, why don't you tell us about our running order for tonight's race?
So, starting in the first position, where he finished last night, is Kenny Zeems with a 27.294. And then, of course, sitting there in second is Trevor Catalano. Third is William Kruska. Fourth is Don Adam Sizik. Fifth is Max Steck. Sixth is Chad Garlisi Jr. Seventh is Eric Conklin. Eighth is Matthew Lambert. Ninth is Tyler Catalano. 10th is Ken Zeems. 11th, Zach Skotnicki. 12th is Colin Johnston. 13th, we're looking at Stephen Barber in the 28. 14th is Dan DiPaolo. Sorry about that. 15th is Mason Hannell. 16th, Jason Han. 17th, Russell Peets. 18 is Patrick Hosier, and that is our starting grid for this evening.
So a 40-lap feature race here. Our lights are off on our Ford Mustang safety car, and we are about to go racing. So our two protagonists, the 15 of Kenny Zeems and the 64 of Trevor Catalano, about to go wheel to wheel. So waiting for our pace car to pull off, and we will be ready to go racing here in the New York Thunder eSeries. And Kenny Zeems hits the gas straight away, heading down into turn one. But Trevor Catalano in the 64 is right on his gearbox, and he goes for the inside straight away.
We saw a little bit, it might have been net code there, it seemed like, as the 15 was able to save it, though. But yeah, that was a case of the 64 of Trevor Catalano being able to just get inside of him there, and now, as we saw, they've been side by side the whole way. You can hold it on that outside as long as you're able to get into the gas, as we see Kenny Zeems doing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That outside line working really, really well there. And very, very close to contact there between Zeems and Catalano. Now, just a family update that Tyler Catalano and Ken Zeems were together on the 9th row of the grid as well. So it'd be interesting to see what's happened there. So let's get a replay of what's happening. And that's Tyler Catalano, the 164, and he's been wrecked. And he is on his roof. My goodness me. So that will no doubt throw a yellow flag caution, and our Ford Mustang safety car will be coming out onto track. So yes, yellow flag. Brian, that gives us opportunity to go back to the fast repair, which Tyler Catalano will be taking right now. So in iRacing, the series organisers can opt to give our drivers the opportunity to come into pit lane and take what's called a fast repair, which allows them to get back on the track and keep racing. Now, our drivers have only one to use, so Tyler Catalano will have to have used his fast repair. And as you quite rightly said last night, you really don't want to be using it up this early in the race.
Yeah, he now has to worry about the rest of this race, that nothing happens. He has to be very careful, or else it's gonna end his night and a chance at a really good run, because he's gonna have so much damage. And these things, you can easily hurt a wheel and your car not turn properly, and you get that meatball flag that every iRacer worries about getting. So the other thing, though, was he ended up having to tow because of him being on his roof. So that's going to put him multiple laps down at this point. So he's going to have to fight to come back from those laps down.
Well, we saw last night, the number two car going a number of laps down, but with the amount of cautions that we have, we actually get some quite a lot of what's called the wave by. So if a car is multiple laps down, it can actually get the wave by past the pace car and begin to get their laps back. So Tyler Catalano's not quite out of this race just yet, but as you say, a long way to go, and not there to support the 64 of Trevor Catalano sitting in second position right now.
Yeah, it's going to be hard, but it can be done, especially depending on the amount of cautions we have. Hopefully these guys, as the laps progress and they get more used to running side by side with one another, it starts to go green flag runs, because it's going to be really fun to see if the tires start to wear off, and how these guys are running and the pace they're running, and if they're able to keep up with one another. As we saw there, though, Kenny Zeems was able to make that outside work. You do not quite have to run the bottom, as long as you can stay close to that person on the bottom and get on the gas at the time you need to get on the gas to carry that momentum. Like, this whole track is just about getting on that gas and carrying the momentum down the stretches, and that's going to be where you make passes, and that's going to be where you make speed.
Yeah, it was interesting as well. The 15 of Kenny Zeems and 64 of Trevor Catalano, they both seemed quite comfortable running side by side with one another, quite close to each other, but with good respect so far. So let's see how that one plays out over the race. And it looks like the lights are off on our Ford Mustang pace car, so we're ready to go green flag racing again. So Kenny Zeems will be in control of the field, but he's usually gasses up early. 64 Catalano is in a dangerous position though, and they are off. Green, green, green here in the New York Thunder eSeries Challenge. So down they go then into turn one as they head in, and it's Kenny Zeems that's got ahead of the 64 of Catalano with that 21 red car, giving the 64 a little push there.
Yeah, they all got a pretty good start there. There wasn't anyone who really pulled away from one another. They were still in their pack going in there, as we see them almost 3 wide right there. Oh, and the 21 gets tagged, and he's able to save it. So great driving. Oh, and it looks like maybe not quite so much as a big wreck happens here in the stretch.
Caution is out.
Well,
We
he
see.
nearly had it. He nearly at the 21 car there. That red 21 car. Oh, big pile up here on the front straight. We talked about that bottleneck. It's such a difficult part to get through. The 21 car. He nearly had it. He nearly did a Christopher Bell save there, but just unlucky coming through here. How do you see this incident here, Brian?
Yeah, he got loose a little bit as we saw him sideways through there, and we thought he had it saved, but these cars are very hard to truly save once they get going. It's easy to overcorrect, and I think that's just a case of what happened there. He overcorrected it, trying to get it back straight, and just ended up causing a wreck. So it's something that we'll see happen a few more times tonight. That I feel like.
So I think we're going to see a few drivers coming into pit lane here as the 28 of Stephen Barber is smoke pouring out of the back of his modified car. And interestingly, there didn't decide to dive into pit lane straight away. So obviously sure that he can perhaps get round and try and not lose too many laps, but he's definitely going to have to come in at some point. And interestingly, that smoke's now disappeared. So is that engine problem rectified itself, do you think?
I think he might have blown his engine there and
Oh dear.
doesn't want to quite tow it, but he ends up having to. I think he was trying to get caught up to the field as we see them now on the front stretch. I think he was trying to get caught up so that he could then pit and not lose a lap. But that ended up blowing his engine, and now he had to tow, which is going to cost him even more laps. That's always one of those things where you never know quite what to do on if you're going to make it or not. So you just kind of drive it and hope that you'll make it back to pit road.
So it's a calculated risk, as they say. Now look at all these cars on the timing screen on the left-hand side of your screen, from 11th down to 17th. A lot of cars going into pit lane, and who does that? That is music to the ears of the 164 of Tyler Catalano, who, but if he can keep safe, he'll be right on the back of his brother Trevor Catalano before too long.
Yeah, he. I think I'm not quite sure how many laps down he is, because he did end up having to tow, so he might need a few more cautions to get those laps back. But if this continues to go this way, he'll easily be back on that lead lap and be right there, running with everyone else.
So 9 laps complete then of this as we enter lap number 10 of this feature race here in the New York Thunder eSeries Challenge here at Phoenix Raceway, ISM Phoenix Raceway. So we're looking at the number 15 of Kenny Zeems, who will be pacing the field. So we've got just a recap on the order. The 15 of Kenny Zeems, the 64 of Trevor Catalano, with the 12 of Kruska, and 631 with that Jack Daniels car there in 4th position.
Yeah, I really hope these guys can get running green flags because I want to see what these guys have for the long run, on whether Kenny Zeems can pull away from Catalano. I think that's going to be a very fun race. Or if maybe one of the guys we haven't actually talked about possibly winning this thing, maybe William Kruska can get going and get in front of everyone and hold that spot then, and maybe see one of the guys that we haven't really talked about hop up there and claim that victory.
Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. This is not just a 2-horse race, and like you say, I really want to see Kenny Zeems, number 15, Trevor Catalano get a good few laps on the green flag because I think they are so closely matched, and really want to see a wheel-to-wheel duel between these two guys. So our lights are off on the pace car. So let's hope that that's what we're going to get right now. So that when the lights go off on the roof of the pace car, that means that we are about to go green flag racing. So you can see the field bunching up. Kenny Zeems moving to the inside, going around the dogleg, waiting just to get the perfect drive. And that drive, and of course these cars only have a 2-speed gearbox, so you just pop it in the second gear and leave it there for the race. So Kenny's got to get this launch perfect, and maybe let's see if Trevor Catalano can make that outside line work. So just waiting for our Ford Mustang pace car to pull in there, and we will be back green flag here in the New York Thunder E-Series. Here they go then, the number 15 and Kenny Zeems gasses up and gets a really good launch again. But Trevor Catalano gets a little bit of a run as well, coming around the outside as they head into turn 1.
Yeah, we saw there that Kenny Zeems is launching right when that pace car pulls off. As we see tires touch there, these cars can touch a little bit. You don't want to hit it too much, or it could possibly spin around. But we saw that he's timing it up. Is Trevor Catalano on when Kenny Zeems is going, because he's been going at relatively the same spot, and if he continues to do that, then one of these times he just may be able to get in front of him.
Tell you what, this is really fierce action between the 15 and the 64 here. Just fantastic. And of course, here at Phoenix, we're just coming into a section called the dog leg here, where there's lots of different lines the drivers can take, and that allows for some fantastic racing. And now look at Catalano in the 64. He's coming to the inside line, but Kenny Zeems is making the outside work in the 15. This is brilliant stuff, Brian.
Yeah, and what was really fun to see there was Trevor Catalano was down on the apron. The apron, like I said, is very slick here in these cars. So for him to be able to hold that and use the throttle to control the car is really amazing to see.
But like as you said, this is not just a two-horse race, because the 631 of Max Steck is there and the 12 of Kruska as well. They are just waiting to see if any problem arises. But look at Kenny Zeems just getting about a car length advantage as we head onto lap 15. This is fantastic racing in these Whelen modifieds. Brilliant.
Yeah, these cars are really making this a four-horse race right now as they are pulling away from the fifth place position.
All right, man, caution is
And
out.
the caution comes out here just as we say that. But that was a good green run. I think it maybe gave them a taste of what they want to see for the rest of this race after this caution, as we get a view on that. So, but I really like to see the 12 and the 631 up there with them.
I think they are. Let's have a look then. The number 44, yeah, just gets a little bit of a twitch there and spins, but just enough to bring the caution out. But probably going to have to do a little bit of a flick turn here. Yep, and able to get going. Now, tell me about the steering on these cars, Brian, because it seems to me that almost a little bit like a very big go-kart, the steering looks to me to be quite positive and quite easy to get the car twitching. Tell us about how these cars behave on the steering.
Yeah, a lot of it you can, of course, turn with the steering wheel, but a lot of these is actually turning with the throttle. You'll see it more in 3 and 4 than you will in 1 and 2, but it does happen in 1 and 2, where if you can just tap that throttle and it will turn the car a bit. I use it especially when getting into 3. A lot of guys are using it. They're letting off, and then the car starts to you'll turn a little bit with the wheel, and then you'll turn it more when you just tap that throttle and work it a little bit to get the car just going left a little bit more. And that's where you saw there, he may have just, he hit that throttle too hard, and that's maybe got his back end to kick out. And at that point, you're trying to put it back straight, and you can end up, like we saw with the wreck earlier, oversteering it and even just spinning yourself out.
So last night, Brian, we saw Kenny Zeems actually go the entire race on one set of tyres, which is quite unusual for a 40-lap race. But of course, we spent a large proportion of the race under the yellow flag, under the caution. Now, Trevor Catalano, he did go into pit lane and was able to have fresh tyres towards the end of the race, but wasn't really able to deploy them to their full advantage. Now, we've had a little bit more green flag running at this stage. This is going to be fascinating to see. If we get quite a bit more green flag running, are those tyres, do you think, are they going to last on these cars, or will the 15 and the 64 have to dive into pit lane at some point?
I think it really, at this point, comes down to driver preference. We saw there, Catalano was not quite able to get in front of Zeems, even trying multiple different lines. He tried the outside, he tried the inside. So he may make the decision a little bit after halfway to come down and get those tires, thinking that he can make his way back up there with fresher tires and use those to his advantage to finally get that little bit more he needs to get in front of Kenny Zeems. Or you could see him decide that track position is too important after what happened last night and decide to just stay out this entire time. So he's got to be thinking that over in his head as this race progresses, and I'm sure that's going to change depending on the amount of cautions we have.
And I would wager, Brian, that these guys, both the 15 of Zeems and 64 of Catalano, they will not want to be split apart. They'll want to mirror each other's strategy. And we've seen a few times our drivers just coming into the past the entrance of pit lane under caution and sort of trying to sell their competitor a dummy, sort of pretending they're going to come into pit lane and then dive out the way and keep going round again. So this is going to be fascinating to see. And as we saw last night, that track position is so important because if you pit and you end up at the back of the pack, you are really putting yourself in a lot of extra danger being caught up in a big wreck.
Yeah, and especially in these cars where we saw a little tap just can put a car going around. You can, if you're hitting equally side by side, these cars can beat and bang all you want. But if you're just your right front is on someone's left quarter panel, it's gonna send them around.
Yeah, they don't need any encouragement to get loose, these cars. So the lights are off on our iRacing Ford Mustang pace car. So that means we are about to go green flag racing again. And we've seen that this is now a 2-horse race gone to a 4-horse race. So Kenny Zeems will pace the field, and we've seen him gas up early, and he goes early right again. And the 64 Catalano looks to the outside now as they head into turn 1. This is just brilliant stuff between the 15 of Zeems and the 64 of Catalano as they head round turn 1 towards the dogleg.
Yeah, when we see contact there as Catalano ends up getting into the back of Zeems and turning him around. I'm sure Zeems is very angry with that ending up happening. He did not want to end up with damage and towards the back while Catalano is sitting out front.
Oh dear, this race just heated up massively. This will be fascinating to get a replay there. Pretty sure that the 64 of Catalano got into the back of 15 Kenny Zeems. So let's have a look at this more closely. You see almost the kind of bump bar there, and it's hard to call there. It's definitely contact, but I think Kenny Zeems was he was getting really loose before Catalano made the contact, almost as if he sort of checked up a little bit. How do you call that one?
I think he got a little bit loose there on exit, but he might have had it straight at that point and was trying to get down to the bottom. But at that point, once he had got loose, it seemed like Catalano had enough momentum that he was already on his inside, and Zeems just turned down. But it's hard to quite tell with that type of incident because we're not the ones knowing what actually was being felt with the car. But it did, from an outside look like he got a little bit loose and just lost some momentum.
Yeah, I would be confident enough to wager that the 64 of Catalano there, that perhaps wasn't intentional. In fact, that obviously they were racing each other very closely together, and just that slight moment, that slight slide, that getting a little bit loose there, the 15 of Kenny Zeems, that was enough for them to make contact. But still only half distance. We're 22 laps of 40. As you see, we've had plenty of caution periods. So Kenny Zeems, if he was put in the wall there, so I would imagine he'll have to take his fast repair. So he'll come in, get his repair, and back out on track again. And of course, he might be able to take some fresh tyres. How long do these cars take to fit new tyres, Brian?
Most of the time, it's not very long. It also just depends on how many you're taking. If you're taking 2 or 4, of course. You typically, it's about average, I would say, is probably 14 seconds is what most end up seeing. But iRacing does sometimes give you a little bit faster, a little bit slower. It really just kind of depends. And there's also little details like windshield tear-offs, things like that that can minutely affect it. And that's really the big thing. Although, looking at it right now, we do have 2 guys that have really made some moves so far this race. Mason Hannell in the 33 is up 11 spots, along with Russell Peets, who was also a big mover last night, is up 11 spots in these grid. So these guys are very much making moves, keeping it safe. And we're going to see, they're going to hope to make out a couple more positions to get up towards that lead.
Yeah, brilliant stuff from the 191 of Russell Peets. So this would be interesting to see if they can get up there in this front pack. And of course, the 631 there of Max Steck there to make Catalano's life a little bit more difficult. So you got to think though, if you're Trevor Catalano here, you know you've got good pace. You've just demonstrated it both tonight and last night. I guess when these pace car lights go off as they have, when it goes green, he'll probably be wanting to make a break if he absolutely can.
Yeah, the biggest thing though was he was having a little bit of trouble, it seemed. It might have been just because he was behind Zeems, that he wasn't able to hold that bottom quite as well. And he was losing some momentum, which, as we saw, the 631 and the 12 were able to catch up to him. And he doesn't want that happening now. So he's going to have to be very smooth, or the two behind him are not out of this. They can keep pace with him.
So, with our pace car lights are off as we come round, the number 64 of Trevor Catalano will get the honour to pace the field now. Let's see how he approaches this one as we wait for the pace car to come in. Kenny Ziem's now back in 14th place, so Catalano leaves it a little bit later, but then gasses up and surprises the field, catches the cars behind him napping, and able to pull about 2 car lengths straight away as they head down into turn 1. So will Catalano be able to escape from the snarling pack behind him?
Yeah, we saw he took a different tactic than what Ziems had been using, as we see them almost 3 wide there through the dog leg. They are piling up back there, but he waited a little bit, whereas Ziems was just gassing as soon as the pace car left the field, or the surface. He just waited a little bit, stacked up that field, and then shot off, but Kruska and Stack are right there with him, and we also see Hanno able to hold pace. So these guys are not giving up and letting Catalano get away.
Yeah, the 33 of Hanoi, that yellow car with the white wheels, very, very impressive, and moves to 3rd position here as we move. We just come round to start lap 27. So Kenny Ziem's now up to 9th position, so he's climbing the pace. Now, did you see if Kenny Ziem's went into pit lane and took a fast repair, or do you think he's still running okay?
Yeah, he was in at one point and definitely got that fast repair along with tires, which we did have some green flag runs there. So that might affect towards the end of this race, especially if we keep going green. If we have a late race caution, he's going to have fresher tires than the guys in front of him. And so that might be a big deal as we see Kruska going to the outside for the lead.
Fantastic stuff, and this is in these cars on this very unique Phoenix Raceway, the driver is able to use so many different lines, and Kruska goes for the inside. That's very tight against the wall there, and Catalano rightly defends and nearly squeezes him straight into the wall, and the 12 of Kruska has to back out of it, and look, that makes him lose a little bit of momentum there, which basically puts him into the path of the 631 of Steck. This is really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I'm sure Kruska was not happy with that move of being pinched down. He's only going to have patience for so long when that's happening. So how long that will be might determine our next caution. So we'll hopefully see this thing run green, though.
Well, this is a great onboard from William Kruska in the number 12, giving a very, very close move. He goes to the inside there, and like you say, gets pinched by Catalano, and here comes Steck round the outside. Let's see if he can make the outside work, because no doubt Catalano and Kruska compromised by that move on the front straight there.
Yeah, Kruska's going to be, again, he's just getting angry at this point because he's being blocked every which way, and there comes a point when you just say, I've had enough. So we'll see if he reaches that point, but I would say he's definitely getting there as we see the caution come out.
Well, Catalano is certainly fiercely defending his position. Perhaps you can understand the 64 Catalano building up a bit of frustration that's maybe built up over the last couple of nights in this series. So here's number 15, Kenny Ziems. Has he got caught in another wreck? He has. Oh dear me, he wrecks the number 44. Now, do you think that'll give him damage? That was a pretty big hit. Do you think that'll give damage to Kenny Ziems, our competitor for the lead?
It really just depends on where he ended up hitting. The front of these things are pretty bulky. It's you don't have to worry too much. The main worry with these things is wheel damage. It's very easy to end up damaging your wheel. So I would say that Kenny Ziems just has to hope that he didn't quite catch his wheel. As we see him around here, we might have had some retaliation happen there with the 44, as we see the 15 of Kenny Ziems around.
Well, this is fascinating stuff. We only have 8 laps remaining in this feature race, and the 15 of Kenny Ziems, he's had to go into pit lane again, so that probably puts him out of the running for this race after battling the front. So just getting involved in a couple of wrecks. So let's get an action replay of that. So the 15 of Ziems, we're looking on the middle of your screen here in the black and red car, coming along the apron, and oh my goodness me, that's something we don't see very often here in iRacing in official series like this.
Yeah, that was Zach Skotnicki who was in that one. He was the one who ended up getting turned by Kenny Zeems there, showing his frustration. I'm not sure if Zach had used his fast repair already and maybe just felt like he had had enough. But he definitely came up and just retaliated there. So it's going to be interesting to see how officials take that one.
Yeah, that's something we don't really want to see. We want to see close racing. We want to see good racing between our drivers here, and we've been very much when the green flag has been out. We've seen some brilliant racing at the front, but there's no place for stuff like that in any form of motorsport, and that's a real shame because I think the number 15 of Kenny Zeem still had an opportunity to make his climb his way back up to the front, but that's his day pretty much over now. So it's going to be a straight fight between the 64 Catalano and the 12 of Kruska. And as you say, Brian, there is the temperatures are rising in those cockpits, and we might see some we might see some pretty aggressive conduct over the final few laps.
Yeah, we're already on lap 33 of this 40 lap race. So I'm sure that there's going to be a lot more blocking, but there comes a point when you say I've had enough and you're just going to send someone into a corner. So it's going to be interesting to see who holds on to that patience and who just says, I've had enough. And we've kind of seen, as we just saw, the temperatures are boiling right now. These guys are heated, they want to race, and things are happening that's causing them to pace along with them. When they are racing, they're getting blocked. So it's going to be fun to watch this one and how it ends.
It is, and of course the 631 of Steck, he just sitting there patiently behind, almost watching these guys fight over it. And it looks like the lights have gone out on the pace car, so we will be good to go shortly with just 6 laps remaining in this race. So not long left in this race. Let's see. Let's hope we get those final 6 laps under greens and we get a brilliant finish to this New York Thunder E-Series. So it's field now slightly depleted with a few cars in pit lane repairing damage, and we'll be ready to go green very shortly here at Phoenix Raceway as the pace car ready to pull off. Let's see if Catalano goes early or if he paces the field again. Let's see. Yeah, checks them up a little bit. Very clever there from 64 Catalano, and able to then gas up and get a good breakaway down the front straight as they head into turn 1. The 61 of Max Steck going into the inside line, and the 12 of Kruska going on the outside.
Yeah, he was able to pull, and a big pile up there. It looks like the 33 is involved, maybe the 191. The 74, a giant pile up there that getting a bunch of different people, with Dan DePalo looking like he may have got the rough end of it.
Yeah, as you say, you've got to watch for engine damage. Of course, these big, massive 6-litre V8 engines. So it's just the smallest of touches there to the 33 car, and that was enough to just create a domino effect. That really wasn't a big contact, but with these sort of semi-open wheel formats, easy to have an accident like that. But as you say, these big engines out the front, easy to get engine damage as well.
Yeah, with that one, it looked like maybe, like I said, you're on the throttle so much here. So when you're on the throttle, go in a turn especially, and you just push up the slightest bit, any contact to your left rear is just going to send it around, and it's just hard to save when you're full throttle at that point. And that just ended up causing the 33 of Mason Hanold to just lose it there.
And I guess as well for our drivers, that's in a kind of perfect blind spot as well, where you're just not going to know if you just get that slightest tap. You can't even preempt it. You've almost got these cars. You can't react quick enough. But if you maybe see the contact coming, you can kind of be ready to catch it. But yeah, just in the blind spot there, as you say. So lap 37 then. So it looks like we will hopefully get that final lap on the green white checker. Just tell our viewers how this process works now as we approach the end of the race, how the race will finish, and under what conditions, Brian.
So the way it works is we'll end up getting a green-white checkered, which means that whenever we go back green, we will take the green flag, we will go around, and as long as there's no caution within that lap, we'll take the white flag. At that point, it's just you're finishing that race. So whatever happens on that lap. You're just making it back to the checkered flag. But another thing that could happen, though, is you take that green flag going into turn 1. There's a pileup. We then throw a caution, and there is another green, white, checkered. So it just comes down to the amount of temps that the series official allow. But we know that we at least have one option available as we did last night, and that makes a great finish to these races.
Yeah, and of course, if we get a couple of green white checkered, if there's anyone who's gone perhaps a little bit too close on fuel, that could possibly cause an issue. Now, I want to mention the 164 of Tyler Catalano, who of course was involved in a wreck early on in the race, but slowly but surely has worked their way up the pack and kept out of trouble. And they could perhaps Tyler Catalano in the 164 could be a key ally for Trevor Catalano in the 64.
Yeah, depending on what ends up happening here, if he can get maybe side by side with some of these people and end up slowing them down, then that'll allow Trevor Catalano to pull away. Oh, and it looks like William Kruska caught the wall there. But uh, as I was saying, if Tyler Catalano can end up racing some of these guys, then that's going to help out Trevor to pull away. But it's going to be very hard on a green-white checker to be able to get that to happen.
The lights are off on the pace car then, and we're ready. Let's see as we're on lap 39 of 40. So this could be coming into the closing stages now. Hopefully, William Kruska on the 12 hasn't incurred any damage. They're running into the wall on behind the pace car. Something that's a slightly bit embarrassing for the number 12, as our field are all bunched right together. Now, Trevor Catalano has made that late breakaway from the pace car with great effect, backing the field up behind him. He's done that twice now. Be interesting to see if he changes his strategy here and if he does a Kenny Zeems and gasses away early. Let's see. So we'll wait for the Ford Mustang to pull away and let our Whelen Modifieds run free. And yes, there goes Catalano again. He's really nailed these restarts. The 64 of Trevor Catalano gets a brilliant breakaway. And look at Tyler Catalano in the 164. Goes up the inside of the 61 of Steck. And he's right in this motor race as well.
And they are 3 wide back there with the 90 of Ken Zeems putting it 3 wide with 2 other drivers. And they are tight through this dog leg. It is close as we see again Tyler Catalano racing the 631 of Max Steck. And we are coming to the white flag as Trevor Catalano takes the white flag.
The white flag now, so that means the last lap here at Phoenix Raceway, and Trevor Catalano is making a great breakaway, so it's going to have to take a big move from the 12 of William Kruska. Has he got enough to get past coming into the final turn?
I think the 12 might send it in deep here, but I don't think he's close enough at this point. Had he been where he was earlier, he might have been able to get there, but it's going to be Trevor Catalano taking the checkered flag and the win in the modifieds.
Great drive there from Trevor Catalano. Did it all his own way in the number 64 car. Unfortunately, losing Kenny Zeems in the 15 earlier on in this race, but I think after missing out last night narrowly, I think Trevor Catalano in the 64, very much a deserving winner, Brian Dell.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that happened there was Kenny Zeems getting wrecked out, but Catalano was able to then, from that point forward, just control the race. He had a few challenges, but was able to hold them off and ends up doing donuts at the end.
I actually think if you don't do a donut celebration, then you shouldn't be given the winner's trophy, because I think it should be the law that you do a big smoky donut, and a very stylish one indeed here from the 64 of Trevor Catalano. He missed out on victory last night, but makes it count tonight. But I tell you what, Brian, when we did have the green flag running there, we saw some brilliant wheel-to-wheel racing, a really interesting combination of this Whelen Modified car and the Phoenix Raceway.
Yeah, these cars are a lot of fun to run. They're just not run that often. And I think Phoenix is a very interesting track for them because it's much bigger than what they normally do. So you typically see them at Bristol and Martinsville and New Hampshire. Phoenix is a much wider open track, and you're on the gas so much longer here because the turns aren't quite as tight. So we got to see some very good racing there.
Oh, and a little family love tap. They're now having a tug. They're having almost like a a face off here on the front straight. So hopefully we'll get some of our leading drivers up with us in the commentary box for an interview. We're just going to take a very short break here on Apex Racing TV. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after a very brief break with our winners. Welcome back to the New York Thunder E Series. Well, what a race that was here at the ISM Raceway at Phoenix. To recap our winning order, it was the 64 of Trevor Catalano who triumphed this evening, followed very closely by the number 12 of William Kruska, and rounding out the podium was the 61 of Max Steck. Now, we have our winner, Trevor Catalano, up with us in the commentary box, and he is with Brian Delp.
Welcome, Trevor, and congratulations on your win. I'm sure it's a big moment for you. How did you end up pulling it off there?
Yeah, um, I didn't mean to get into Kenny there. Actually, as soon as I hit him, I rated up and said sorry, and he goes, "Yeah, I just got loose, and you were down there, so whatever." Didn't mean that, but I don't know. I just knew off the restarts I had to mix it up. I knew Kenny was going early, so they all thought I was gonna go early, but I knew I had to go a little bit later just to keep them on their toes there.
Yeah, we saw that your restarts you were able to pull towards the end there. Tyler was able to get up there and race some of the guys behind you. Were you talking with Tyler at all during that late restart?
Yeah, I was actually letting him know when I was gonna go, so he could try to get up here and help me out a little bit, and maybe both of us get in the top three. But P4 is good for him, and we'll take.
Now, another thing that was different than last night is you pit last night for tires. You made the opposite strategy tonight. Is that something you picked up between races?
Yeah, when I started second tonight, I knew I decided that I wasn't gonna pit unless Kenny did. I wanted to make sure that I stayed out. Once we got to lap 20, I decided that I was staying out. I didn't really matter at that point. Once we got there, it was just gonna be too short of a race to get back up here.
Well, congratulations on the first place finish. Is there anyone you want to thank?
Yeah, I want to thank William for putting this on. Great league, and I had a lot of fun in this.
Well, there it was. That was Trevor Catalano pulling out a first place finish. Congratulations again on the big win. I believe next we have the second place finisher, William Kruska, coming away in the second spot here, up a position from the starting grid. Welcome and congratulations on your second place finish. Did you think you had something for it at the end?
Kind of. I think I would have needed one more lap to get him.
Now, we saw a little bit there towards one of the green flag runs. He was blocking quite a bit. Were you getting pretty frustrated there?
I don't know, like 50-50. I kind of knew he was gonna do it, so I kind of just shrugged it off and waited for him to make a mistake or something. But I don't know, not really.
Now, we saw that you were able to stay up front there, and you were one of the people who also decided not to pit at all. Did you think the track position was just that important?
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't really feel any different with the tires. To be honest, I don't really think they fell off that much. I'm not sure how much they fell off, but I don't know. They didn't really make a difference to me, but it definitely was track position.
Well, a great run for William Kruska. Anyone you want to thank for your second place finish?
Not to thank, but kind of, I don't want to say like a shout out, but I just want to extend my thoughts and prayers to Buffalo. It's really close to home. I'm like 30 minutes out, so it's kind of a scary situation for all of us, not just Buffalo.
Well, congratulations again on your second place finish, finishing one spot higher than you qualified. That was William Kruska and the number 12 finishing second place. I believe we have one more interview, which is Eric Conklin in the 54, who ended up finishing in seventh place. Welcome, Eric. And how did you feel tonight's race went for you?
I think it went terrible. Um, After about lap 5, it just went all downhill. I was battling for third position. Then I hit the wall, so the tire was bent in. I had to go in and use the fast repair, and then went all the way to the back. I tried to work my way up there like last night, but it was too slow, and I was only able to get seventh out of it.
Now, you said you ended up having to go back to the back. Racing through the packs there and the wrecks that were happening, was that kind of nerve wracking trying to decide on what was going to happen through each turn?
Yeah, definitely nerve-wracking, especially because I kept getting stuck on the outside. Um, the one thing that held me back was cars going too wide in front of me. So that was kind of hard to navigate through that.
Well, a seventh place finish is not the worst thing in the world, especially with 18 drivers. So it's still a pretty good finish there. Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to?
I'd like to thank my dad for getting me this simulator and Rage Carts for sponsoring me during racing during Champ Carts. Um, it's been very fun here at the New York eSeries and hoping for a season 2.
Well, congratulations on the seventh place finish and a good run in the New York Thunder E Series. That was Eric Conklin in the 54, finishing seventh place tonight.
So that's just about all we've got time for here in the New York Thunder A Series. Brian, final thoughts before we close up for tonight.
I think it was a lot of fun racing. I think we kind of saw what we expected to see. These cars, it's a lot of give and take, and with 40 laps, it's very hard to truly give because you need to push the entire time. So we saw guys pushing up a little bit and maybe accidentally turning someone. We saw some anger, of course, with some retaliation, which I'm sure with 4 races that has happened, it might not have just been a one race incident that finally got to him there. But Trevor Catalano was able to pull away there at the end and put on a great race to the finish.
It certainly was a fascinating contest around this wonderful Phoenix Raceway, that is for sure, Brian. That's all we have time for then here on Apex Racing TV. We hope you enjoyed this broadcast of the New York Thunder E Series. And as Mr. Conklin said there, hopefully we'll see you again for a season 2. On behalf of myself and everyone at Apex Racing TV, including my co-commentator Brian Delp and our producer Dennis Branch, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Apex Racing TV.